Section 21 of Neighbourhood, A Year's Life in and About an English Village by Tickner Edwards. October, Part 2. Said Miss Susan Angel this evening, as I leant over the counter of her little dark shop, studying the rows of sweet-stuff bottles beyond. "The children here, 'tis real astonishing how changeable they be. One time 'tis all licorice with them, and next 'tis all sherbet suckers, and then maybe 'tis naught but toffee balls for weeks on end. But you—" She turned me a glance full of smiling, proud approbation. "You, come winter or summer, come rain or shine, I allers knows 'twill be nobbut black fours." She reached down the ancient glass jar and stabbed at its contents ruminatively with an iron fork. "Black fours, ah," she mused, as the shining magpie lumps rattled into the brass scale pan, "and I never smells 'em, but I thinks of my old missus as, Lorry me, how many long years ago. Fond on 'em, were she? Ah, and scrunch 'em up, 'a could, quicker'n e'er one wi' a natural jaw." "What kind of jaw, then, had she, Susan?" "Ah, I believe you. My dear, the money as it costed. All gold and ivory like, and red stuff. And when 'a died, didn't ever I show 'em to you?" She disappeared into the little kitchen behind the shop. I heard a drawer unlocked. There was a sound of rummaging, accompanied by asthmatic interjections. Miss Susan Angel came forth again, bearing a bulky parcel. This, as she removed various coverings, became smaller and smaller until, from a final wrapping of tissue paper, there appeared a beautiful double set of false teeth. Miss Angel held them up to my gaze admiringly. "Left 'em to me, 'a did. 'Twere all writ in her will, 'To my faithful servant and friend, Susan Angel, I give and bequeath,' and all the rest on it. Ah, bless her and rest her soul." It seemed rather an appropriate legacy, for Miss Angel had possessed not a single tooth of her own in all the years I had known her. But the display of the treasure provoked a very natural commentary. "How long have you had these put by, Susan?" "Nigh upon 30 year, my dear." "And never used them yourself all that time, although you—" "What?" The old lady drew herself up, the youthful blue eyes in her wrinkled face flashing indignation. "What d'ye say? Me use 'em? Me? The very same as my dear old missus chawed with? Shame on you! Not if there was naught to eat but cracking nuts left i' the world for us all." I took the rebuke in penitent silence. When she had restored the revered relics to their locker in the back room, she resumed her knitting in the great wicker chair behind the counter. In a minute or two she had alike forgiven me and forgotten the cause of her displeasure, as I knew from her tone. "How the evenings do draw in, to be sure," she observed, laying down her work. "Almost dark it be, though 'tis no more'n 6 o'clock." The ancient timepiece in the corner promptly droned out 11. Miss Angel clapped her hands. "What did I tell you?" she said triumphantly. "Wonderful good time 'a keeps, when 'a recollects to put 'un back reg'lar." She rose and reversed the hands for a circle or two. "That'll do till morning," said she placidly. "You wants to be a little particular in country places. It bean't like in towns, where gypsies, I do believe, and this time o' night, to be sure." I followed her sudden glance to the doorway. A heavy grinding of wheels had sounded outside, and across our field of view, silhouetted against the deep turquoise blue of the night, there passed what looked like a gypsy's caravan. A bony horse toiled in the shafts, and a long, lean man walked in front, dragging at the animal's bridle with almost as much apparent effort. Lights shone from the windows of the vehicle, and its chimney smoked voluminously against the stars. As it went by we could see another man sitting upon the steps in its rear, his squat, bulky form entirely blocking the open door place. The caravan pulled up about midway over the green. "Now that won't do," observed Miss Angel decisively. "We wants nane o' they sort traipsin' about Windlecombe after dark. Leastways not them as keeps chicken. 'Tis on your road home." Just gie him a word as you goes by, my dear. Tell him as you wants to save trouble for the policeman." In no wise intending to disturb the gipsies, I nevertheless took the short cut over the green, passing in the darkness close by their queer, spindle-shanked, top-heavy dwelling. As I cut through the beam of light that poured from the doorway, a suave voice hailed me. "Hi, my man! Just a moment. Now, Grooves, your difficulty is at an end. I have intercepted one of the inhabitants, and doubtless he will— Yes, inquire of him very politely now where we may obtain water." The long, lean man had blundered into the light beside me, carrying 2 pails. He was clothed in little better than rags from head to foot. A massive gold watch chain glittered across his buttonless waistcoat. He turned upon me 2 gaunt, diffident eyes. "Water," he hesitated, holding out the pails helplessly before him. "Water, you know. Could you be so kind as to—" The suave, flute-like voice sounded again from the depths of the caravan. "Now, Grooves, if I am to carry out the little supper scheme I explained to you, no time must be lost. When once they are peeled, potatoes should never—" The owner of the voice appeared in the doorway. "Dear, dear, my good fellow, there you are, still standing there, and I fully impressed it upon you that if rabbit is permitted to bake 1 moment longer than— Grooves, give me those pails." But the long, lean man had drawn me precipitately away. As we hurried across the green together in the direction of the well house, he seemed to consider himself under some necessity of explanation. "It is his caravan," he said, "Spelthorne's, you know, and I am travelling with him for a bit, because I was run down and other things. One of the best fellows breathing, he is, though you mightn't— I mean, I so often forget what I— Of course, I really don't wonder that sometimes he— Why, I'd forgotten to unharness the horse. Do remind me, will you, when we get back? But quietly, you understand. Spelthorne, he is the best fellow breathing, but— Oh, is this the well? It is most kind of you, I'm sure." He seemed in so strained and nervous a mood that I did not trust him to handle the heavy bucket and chain, nor to return unaided to the caravan with his burden. When we drew into the beam of light again, I could see Spelthorne inside, stooping over the little cooking stove in his shirt sleeves and a great sombrero. If anything, his clothes were even more tattered and soiled than his companions'. At sound of our clanking pails, he turned, stared, then swept me a low bow with the sombrero. "Thoughtless, very thoughtless. Indeed, most selfish of Grooves," he said confidentially, for the long, lean man had hurried away to attend to the horse. "A good fellow, such a good fellow you cannot think, but he has this little failing of sometimes taking advantage of any kindness that— But excuse me, I must get the potatoes on." I had hardly gone a dozen paces towards home when I heard him pounding after me. "What is the name," he asked breathlessly, of this village?" And when I had told him, "There are beautiful old cottages here, are there not? And quaint people? And charming country round about? Such a spot, isn't it, where 2 artists could find incessant inspiration and— But the question had been put to me before, and too often. "Well, I don't know," said I discouragingly. "The place is very quiet and humdrum, and most inconvenient. No railway and no roads to anywhere, and—" "The very place," he broke in delightedly. "I shall persuade poor Grooves to remain here with me a month." And when I took a last look at the night, some hours after, I beheld the faint glow from the windows of the caravan upon the green with dismal foreboding. A month of that prospect, and not only that, but something worse, for upon the wings of the slow night wind there drifted over to me the mournful thrumming of a guitar. 3. As it turned out, the caravanners have proved very little trouble to any, and to myself least of all. In a day or two they moved down to the riverside, choosing one of the wildest and leafiest corners of the old abandoned chalk quarry, and for a week past I have seen nothing of them but a wisp of blue smoke from afar. And indeed, October in the country, if your design is to keep step and step with the month through all its bewildering changes, leaves you but scanty leisure for social traffic with your kind. Every day now there is something new to wonder at and ponder over. Today the gossamer was flying. If you stood in one of the low-lying sheltered meadows and turned your back to the light, the air seemed full of these ashen grey flecks, some only the merest threads, others of the breadth of a finger and several inches long. I have always believed that the gossamer spiders sit in the hedgerows spinning these fairy draperies and letting them go upon the breeze to little more use and purpose than when a child blows soap bubbles for the mere delight of watching them soar. At least, what end could possibly be served by them, other than the sufficient and obvious one of bringing a note of austere, chilly delicacy into the riotous colour of an October day? But idling along this morning with literally thousands of these grey filaments tempering the rich gold of the sunshine far and near, I chanced to stretch forth a hand and capture one of them. Between my fingers there hung a shred of fabric infinitely finer than anything that ever came from loom devised by man, and within it sat the gossamer spider herself, a shining black atom, evidently vastly surprised and alarmed at the sudden termination of her flight. After that I pulled down a score or so of these gossamer airships, and although a few were tenantless, the most of them bore a passenger embarked on who shall say how long and how hazardous a voyage? Yet while none fell to earth as I watched, but seemed to have the power of rising ever higher and higher, it is certain that the gossamer spider's flight must end with each day's sun. The heavy autumn dews must sweep the air clear of them at first tinge of dusk. If there is anything in the old saying that a plentiful berry harvest foretells a hard winter, then have we bitter times in store. The hedges are loaded with scarlet wherever you go, and yet in all this flaunting brilliance there seems to be no two shades of red alike. The holly berries approach more nearly than any to pure vermilion. Then come the hips, the rose berries, with their tawny red, and the haws that are richer of hue than all others perhaps, yet of a sombreness that quietens the eye for all its glow. Ruddy are the bryonies and the bittersweet. The rowans love to hold aloft their masses of pure flame, the rich rowan colour that is always seen against the sky. Along the edge of the hazel copse, where the butcher's broom grows, its curious oblong fruit gives another note of red, but they are all essentially different colours. Nature often duplicates herself in blues, yellows, and particularly in a certain shade of pale purple, of which the mallow is a common type, but among red flowers, red berries, finding one, you shall not find its exact counterpart in hue in all the countryside. In southern England, the general lurid effect due to change of leafage in the forest trees belongs of right to November, but already there are abundant signs of what is coming. Though the woods, on a distant view, still look gloriously green, a nearer prospect reveals a touch of autumn in almost every tree. In the beech woods, nearly all the branches are tipped with brown. The elms have bright yellow patches oddly dispersed amidst foliage still of almost summer-like freshness. The willows by the river are full of golden pencillings. Only the oaks remain as yet uninfluenced by the changing times. The temperate autumn nights that have checked the sap flow of less hardy things have had no influence on the oak woods. They wait for the first real frosts, the knock-down blow. And strangely, though October is nearing its end, the frosts do not come. The nights are still, moist, dark, and full of the twanging note of door beetles, and now and again the steady whir of passing wings. This is the sound made by the hosts of migrant birds, all journeying southward, travelling in silence and by stealth of night. Coming out into the darkness and hearing this mighty rushing note high overhead, you get a queer sense of underhand activity and concealed purpose in the world, as though scenery were being swiftly changed, a new piece hurriedly staged under cover of the blinked lights. It tends towards a feeling that is rather foreign, not to say humbling, to your desires, that of being made a spectator rather than a participant in the great earth play. Or it may have another and a stranger effect. The sound of all that strenuous motion, the deep travel note high in the darkness, may come to you with all the urging inspiration of a summons. You may restrain, only with difficulty and much assembling of prudence, the impulse to gird up and be off southward in the track of the flying host. The old nomadic instinct is not dead in humanity, as he well knows who keeps his feet to the green places of earth, and his heart tiding with the sun. Now, too, the brown owl begins his hollow plaint in the woodlands. Woo, 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 comes to you through the fast falling dusk, the direction and intensity of the cry varying with astonishing swiftness as you stop to listen on your homeward way. This is conceivably the to-woo that Shakespeare heard, and there is another note which seems to be an answer to it, and which sounds something like kerwick, and might by a stretch be allowed to stand for the to-wit in the song. To-wit, to-woo in a single phrase from a single throat, that seems to be a piece of owl language that has become obsolete with the centuries. There is a stretch of lane here, running between high grassy banks, densely overshadowed by trees, which is always dark on the clearest nights of any season, but of a Cimmerian blackness on these moonless evenings in late October. As if they knew their opportunity for service, the glowworms often light up the place from end to end, so that it is possible, steering by their tiny lamps alone, to keep out of the ditch that yawns invisibly on either hand. I came through this lane this evening, and counted near upon a score of these vague blotches of greenish radiance, hovering amidst the dew-soaked grass, each bright enough to show the time by a watch held near. As long as I can remember, glowworms have been plentiful in this stretch of dark, overshadowed lane, and very scarce in all other quarters of the village. New colonies of glowworms seem difficult to establish, although single lights do appear in places where they have not been seen before, and in ensuing year appear again and again, generally in slowly increasing numbers. It is not wonderful that glowworms should keep to the same grassy bank, season after season, because, as all countrymen know, it is only the lampless male that flies. The female, who bears the light, and on whom the persistence of the race depends, lives and dies probably within no more than the same few square yards of tangled herbage. What really seems wonderful is that single glowworms of the female sex should occur in places far removed from old resorts of their kind, seeing how feeble are their means and how slow their rate of travel. I have said that the flocks of birds that can sometimes be heard in the quiet of October nights, passing seaward over the village, are generally silent, save for the dull, pulsating roar of their wings. As I lifted the latch of the garden gate to-night, and stood a moment listening in the darkness, the old sound grew out of the silence of the hills, and there went swiftly by what seemed only a small flock. But now and again, as they passed, I could hear a note bandied to and fro in the company, a chuckling, voluble note which I recognised instantly They were field fares, the first comers of their species. From now onward, I knew, their queer outlandish cry would mingle with the common sounds of the fields, and not only theirs, but the notes of all other foreign birds that winter here, for the fieldfare is generally the last to come. This cry in the darkness above me, however, was strange in a double sense, because while the silent hosts were emigrants, only at the commencement of their long perilous journey, this chattering company had safely arrived at its bourne, all the hazards of the voyage happily past. And it seemed only in the way of nature for bird or man to set forth mute of voice upon a difficult and dangerous enterprise, while to win through safe and sound must provoke each alike to self-congratulation. My fieldfares were hallooing because they were out of the wood. End of section 21.
Please subscribe to update new videos. Please share and like if you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much.